Buongiorno, buonasera, benvenuti amici. Welcome, my friends. My name is Vincenzo, and welcome to my channel. And the channel is Fountain Pen Therapy. Well, I thought I'd pick up on what's popular these days, and started by, I believe it's Simone, if I'm pronouncing that properly. 8 more questions, or there were originally 8 questions, or a series of questions, and people have some fun answering those questions, obviously having to do with inks, paper, and fountain pens. And now there's a new version of that. It's 8 more questions, if you will. So what I propose to do is I'm going to take those 8 questions, or in fact 8 questions and a bonus question, that makes it 9, and I'm going to give you my own spin on though each of those questions. So without any further ado, here is Fountain Pen Therapy's 8 more questions. Okay, so the first question is what? Well, the first question, from what I understand, is do you have different uses for different pens? Okay. Now, first of all, you have to understand, I have, over 400, anywhere between 400 and 500 pens, depending if I really count them properly. But certainly 410, active, good pens. The rest are somewhere in boxes that I don't care for. But so, I got to rotate these pens, right? And the usual suspects always end up coming to the foreground, evidently. But having said that, here's how I like to use my pens. First of all, there's office, and then there's what I call my fountain pen therapy. And then there's vacation, there is journaling, so different uses for sure have different pens. Let me go to my overhead camera and demonstrate to you how I think about choosing my pens for the office. Okay, so first of all, I have my usual suspects, and my usual suspects are, I have one signature pen that I like to use all the time, which is my Montblanc 149. I also like to use this pen to impress people around a conference table. So just a question of intimidating them with the right tools, right? Then I also have either a ballpoint, and it varies, and I'm showing you here my Montblanc ballpoint, along with a pencil. So I'm showing you here a Montblanc pencil. So those are for sure 3 absolutely necessary pens. Then I have a roller ball, and the roller ball I'm using these days is this Pelikan M600, beautiful roller ball. I gotta tell you, probably the best roller ball insert that I've had the occasion of using. So we start with that. After that, it varies, and that's where the rotation comes in. But in terms of types of pens, I will always have a stub. This is my Delta Black Lex. And I will also always have a broad, and this would be my Bexley broad. The reason for that is that I find that writing with broad nibs or stubs with a wider line, I'm able to use all kinds of paper, and I write quicker. It's smoother, it's wetter, it just goes on quicker than if I would use a medium or a God forbid a flex or a fine. Fine, I have a tendency to not write as fast, if you will. So broad, this one has a broad nib, and a stub is definitely, I always make sure I have one or both. Then I also want to make sure at the office that I have a red pen. Well, red pen. A pen that has some red ink usually ends up being a red pen because I kind of match my ink with the pen, right? The reason why I need a red pen is to either highlight some notes when I'm reading, for example, an article on a PDF, on a photocopy sheet, and I want to highlight something on the margin, or if I do corrections to any texts that I may be giving to my secretary, I like to use red. Red is also for notation, for notes to different lawyers in the office. I always like to use red because it sticks out and the person will be able to identify that it's my comment, if you will. So it's really for commentary. There's always a red pen. Then what I have is the following. Because I use, let me just show you a journal. This is my daily agenda, which is the Kimbor. It's in fact an imitation. Let me try to find an empty page somewhere. Okay, here we go. Which is actually an imitation of the Obonichi. And I find that if I'm using a broad nib, the grid is so small, and there's little space for every day. So for example, my to-do list would be drawn up with a fine nib so that it could fit in those small grids, if you will. Okay. I also use the page to note any phone calls that I may be getting, or reminders of any kind. And because I want to be able to fit it in that small grid, well, then I would use a fine nib. And of course, I would just take whatever pen, and I rotate all the pens that have fine nibs. I would use them. For example, this week, I would be using my Visconti Opera Master along with my fine nib in this Optima Aurora. So that's in terms of the fine nibs. The fine nib will also get used in, let me just see if I have it here. I have a personal 5-year journal. For example, 2024, 25, 26, 27, 28, where you just have this space for your day and you can continue on the other. So I would use a fine nib typically in this 5-year journal just to make sure that I can fit in as much as possible in that small area. Okay, so that's where I would use my fine nibs. The other occasion, I think, for me to use fine nibs is when I want to practice my handwriting. I find that practicing your handwriting with a finer nib, because if I use a stub nib, my handwriting looks gorgeous. So, so if I want to practice my handwriting, I would typically use a fine or a medium nib pen, whatever that may be. And these days, I find myself using all my Grail pens when I want to practice my handwriting. It just inspires me all the more. Okay, so there you have it. Now, so that's really the office, if you will, and I rotate this type of pens in my 12 pen holder, if you will, because I can get them all in there. And I have variety, so I'm not bored, and I'm stimulated and I'm encouraged. And every week I ink and I fill 12 pens that fit in there of those categories, if you will. Okay? So that's the office. What about fountain pen therapy? Well, fountain pen therapy for me consists of a couple of things. First of all, if I want to just scribble and have fun on any journal, typically I use my flex nibs. So now flex nibs have become my scribble, have fun pens. Here I'm showing you two. I'm showing you the Magna Carta Mag 600 and my Scribo La Dotta, which, by the way, I could use to have fun or even on a daily basis. I would categorize this along with my stub and my bowl because it just writes such a thick line. There's a lot of fun to write with. And typically I would also take out my vintage nibs that have flex in them just to have fun. So the scribbling and the having fun pens would be typically flex nibs, and I have a series of flex nibs that I rotate. Okay, then I have, for example, pens. Let's say that I'm on the road and I'd like to just bring a pad with a pen. I find that a lot of these bigger pens don't fit in this little latch. So I have what I call my thin pens. I have a series of thin pens like this one, for example. This is the Aurora. Beautiful, beautiful nib, writes really well, and I find that they fit in really nicely. Not a problem. I have a Parker that does the same trick here, so they would fit in really nicely because most of these latches I find are not big enough to accommodate some of the bigger pens. So, I can bring two pens with me in this, for example, in this leather cover with my journal, and there you have it. So I would use typically my thinner pens for that type of accommodation. Okay. Now, what about vacation, you would say? Well, vacation. So let's add my thin pens to my... and my fine nibs. There you go. Vacation. Well, typically for vacation, I would bring vacuum fillers. Vacuum fillers that have the ability to with the latch there, so that I can shut off the shut-off valve, as they say. Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, they have an enormous amount of ink in their reservoir, so I would never run out of inks. Two, I can lock up the valve here when I'm on the plane, and so that the pens don't burp and don't spill on me. Typically, I would bring my Pilot A23. These days, I would bring my Asvine V200, which serves a double purpose. I could write with these. I could have a lot of ink. I have the shut-off valve. Plus, I have a series of flex nibs on all my V200s, so I can also have fun with them. So there you have it. So I have my fun pen and a practical pen. And typically, I would also bring along with me my Wing Sung 699, which is an imitation of the A23. If I'm afraid that I'm going to lose the A23, I have a series. I have, I think, 4 of these 699s, different shading. This is the gray. I have the brownish, the transparent, etc. And I could use different inks just for the pleasure. So that, in a nutshell, is where I use my pens. Now, you might be saying, what happens to pocket pens? Unfortunately, I do not have the habit of putting pocket pens in my pockets. I don't use my pockets all that much. You'll forgive me, but I use what they call a man purse. The Italians like that. Beautiful leather purses that I've bought in Italy, and typically I put my wallets in there, put my phone, my keys, and if I have a couple of pens, I would have a couple of pens, but I wouldn't typically use a pocket pen. So pocket pens I have for my collection, but I find myself not using them, which is unfortunate, but be very frank with you, that's the situation. So there you have different uses for different pens. That's question number 1. Let's go to question number 2. Okay, so we're back with question number 2. Now, question number 2 is, how do you choose the pens and inks you will use next? Okay, first of all, I kind of rotate my pens and I ink them and choose them once a week. And I kind of combine office and what I would say is fountain pen therapy, or my channel as well. Let me explain. Okay, in terms of the inks that I use, some of the pens find themselves already inked, so I would repeat the same ink in some of the pens. I wouldn't wash them out constantly, especially the ones I'm using more regularly. But I would also, and let me go to my overhead camera. For example, this week I reviewed these 3 inks, Toyo Ashi inks, a blue, a light blue, a green, and a dark blue. It appeared on my weekly recap, and I inked several pens, or 3 pens with that ink, which are 1, 2, and I believe the third one, I'm not sure if it was this one, I believe. So typically I would keep those pens for the week because I would want to test the inks just to see if the inks behave, and if I have to come back and make an additional comment or correct some of the preliminary conclusions. So I typically, my channel will leave me, or whatever I'm reviewing would lead me to keep some of the pens. The same thing goes for this Pinaider La Grande Bellezza, which it's a haul for this week. I had reviewed it. I did an unboxing. So typically I would use that pen and carry it over for the following week just to, write with it a little more. And again, if I need to correct anything, I would come back to the following week. So that's explained by these 3. These 2 are also my fine that I mentioned in my office, because this is my office. It typically is what I would bring in next week. So you have my usual suspects: my pencil, my ballpoint, my Mont Blanc signature pen, my roller ball, my red to make the corrections. I have 2 stubs here because for long writing sessions. And these 2 stubs also serve a purpose for testing these 2 pens, which I had reviewed in the previous weekly recap. So I keep them in my rotation again to continue using them in the hope that I could provide further insight if necessary. For example, I wanted to test whether or not these 2 pens would have any drying issues after a while. So far, so good. So typically it served double purpose. It served the purpose for my channel, but at the same time, it gave me the stub pens that I need for long writing sessions during the week. These 2 are the fine nibs that I talked to you about, for my journal, for my agenda, where I need to write finer lines in that small grid. So this is my fine in my Santini and another fine in my Optima Aurora. And these 3 I mentioned. The inks, I would kind of use the inks I reviewed the previous week if I can, or I would ink the pen that I need with the same ink that's in it. And usually I keep track of what I put in my pens in a separate journal. So that's the way I would choose the pens for the following week, if you will. So that's question number 2. Be right back with question number 3. Okay, question number 3. What pens would I typically use for longer writing sessions? Well, I think I've answered that question as well in my previous 2, but just to go over perhaps just to be a little more specific. As I mentioned, when I'm talking about longer writing sessions, and let me demonstrate that, I don't want to fight the paper that I'm writing with, so typically I would want to use a stub. The stub allows me to write quicker, and with there's a flow there. I'm not I don't need to look into the what I'm how I'm writing. The fine is more like practicing my handwriting. I'm a little bit slower for some reason. A broad, okay, there's no ink in this one, but a broad nib would also do the trick. Speaking of broad, typically these Jinhao 9019s are often used. First of all, the ink capacity is enormous, and these number 8 size nibs on these Jinhaos, these are all medium, but between you and I, they write like broad nibs, and I find them very comfortable. So they would definitely get the nod for long writing sessions. And, you know, apart from some journaling that I do at home, and the journaling at home, I'm more relaxed. Take my time. I use whatever pen suits my fancy. But long writing sessions at the office, typically I would use these types of pens. These are often used. But my favorite these days, I gotta tell you, is this Wing Sung 630. First of all, they're piston fillers. They have large ink capacity. They have a number 8 size nib. And that Wing Sung medium nib is just, again, writes almost like a broad nib. And it never, heart start, broad, not bored. It never heart starts on me. These things work like a charm. I've ordered several more. I also have typically a red one, as I mentioned to you, in my repertoire as well. So it would be wider nibbed pens with large ink capacities would typically be the pens I choose for long writing sessions. There you have it. That's question number 3. Let's go to question number 4. Okay, what is your all-time favorite pen? Well, if you guys don't know by now, my all-time favorite pen, which is my all-time grail pen, is my beautiful Delta Dolce Vita original. The original, not the remake from the new Delta that has just been resurrected by Mr. Nino. Beautiful 18 karat fine nib in this one. It's a huge, chunky pen. This is my darling. This I will leave with my will. This is my all-time grail. Nothing will ever beat this. This represents who I am, where I come from. It's I don't know how to describe it. I think the only way that you can understand how special this nib is to check out my video where I review the unboxing of this pen, and where I have tears in my eyes. Very emotional video. I invite you to take a look at it. So that is my all-time favorite pen. What other pens have special meaning to me? I would also say that this Delta was given to me by Nino Marino when I did a tour of his factory. He made this pen specially for me. He had just a few rods of this resin left, and he made this beautiful pen that he called Napoli C, the SEA. So the Napoli Waters, it's one of one. There is only one in the world, with a beautiful 18 karat gold nib that was specially tuned by his son, who is now going to becoming a nibmeister, with all silver, solid silver trimmings. Just a very, very special pen. The other special pen that I would say to you is my, just one second, I'm trying to get it out here. Where is it? Yes. I would say the other special pen is this Montblanc 149. The reason why it's special, not because it's the Mont Blanc 149 and everything that goes with it, but this was a gift from my wife. So these are three very, very special pens that I cherish. And lastly, in terms of enjoyment, pure enjoyment, with no sentimental value, these days, this Scribo La Dotta with this feel, the flex nib, kind of checks all the boxes for me. It's elegant. It's really, really inspirational. Take a look at that resin. That nib is so special. It's a gold nib. It's a comfortable pen. So in terms of pure writing experience, right now anyway, this Scribo makes the list. So there you have it. Let's proceed to the next question. Next question. If you have to choose one nib size, which would it be? I'm not sure what is meant by nib size. I'm assuming that nib size, because there's another question about nib grind. So I'm not sure if nib size is making reference to a number 5 size, 6 size, or 8 size nib, or if it's making reference to fine, medium, broad, etc. But I'll answer both. Okay. So if I would have to choose one nib size, which would it be? If it's between 5, a size number 5, number 6, or number 8, there is no doubt that I would choose a number 8 size nib. That there's something special about a number 8 size nib that makes you just want to write more and more. At least that's my feeling. So I would definitely favor a number 8 size nib over a number 6 and a number 5. In that order, by the way. If we are making reference to, fine, medium, extra fine, broad, stub, I think if I would only have to have one, I'd give you the boring answer, which is the medium. Just because medium would give me, I think it's a nice medium, right? It's in between. It's not too thin. It's not too thick. I think the medium would probably do the trick and kind of cover all bases. So it would be a medium. It's a boring answer, but it would be a medium. So that's the answer to that question. Let's look at the next question. Okay, the next question is, what is your favorite nib grind? Again, I'm not sure whether we're referring to just simple extra fine, fine, medium, broad, stub situations, or if we're referring to specialty grinded nibs. I don't have that many specially grinded nibs because I've not yet had the occasion of using a Nibmeister, believe it or not, which I plan to do when I go to one of these pen shows, which, again, I've never been to a pen show. So, but let me demonstrate to you what I think would be something fun. Be right back. We'll go to my overhead camera. Okay, so we're back. The only two pens that I've had special grinds on done are two Joya pens that I purchased from Stilo e Stile. The beauty of Stilo Stile, and I think others do it as well, but they do it systematically, I think, to most of their pens. They give you a choice of having it ground by different Nibmeisters. And I have this Joya pen with a fine nib that I had ground into an italic fine. So, and it is, let me tell you, such a pleasure to write with this pen because I have the line variation typically coming with an italic grind in a fine nib. If I could have every fine nib ground to this type of smooth. This is more of a cursive italic because it is quite smooth. Okay, just a hint of feedback, just a perfect grind. So if I would have my way, I would have, well, there you go. It's kind of snatched there because there is that italic. I would have all my fine nibs ground that way. So I guess the answer would be to get it, get a little bit of stub in every nib. This is another Joya. This is the medium that I had ground into an italic as well. So this is a medium. So it gives me the line variation. It gives me the line variation of a, of a medium nib that has kind of a stubbish writing experience. So I guess that would be my favorite grind so far. I don't typically like architect nibs or architect grinds. I just can't write properly with them. I don't know if this is referred to as a grind, but anything that I guess I can turn into a flex nib, I would certainly enjoy doing as well. This is the Fountain Pen Revolution nib, which comes already, as a flex nib. But I've ordered other nibs, for example, the Kaweco and a Schmidt nib. It's been turned into a flex nib. I'm looking forward to receiving those two nibs, and I guess so. The answer would be if I can turn an ordinary nib into a flex nib or a semi-flex nib, I think I would enjoy that as well. So that's for that. Let's proceed with the next question. Okay, so next question. What ink would I choose if I had one ink for the rest of my life? I'm going to give you the boring answer, but it would be, first of all, color. It would be a turquoise color, whatever it is. And in terms of brand, either Hiroshizuku, Aurora, Leonardo Officina, thinking about my turquoise inks, or Dieman. They have a few. But at the end of the day, if I have to choose one that would satisfy the brand and the color, it would be Hiroshizuku Konpeki. That ink gives me everything I need. Okay, that's a simple answer, right? There you go. And there you have it. So let's proceed to the next question. What's an absolute deal breaker for a pen and for an ink? That's the next question. I guess I'm going to, you can have a deal breaker, positive or negative. I'm going to give it the negative twist. I don't like extra fine nibs. So any nib that is less than a fine, for me, is a deal breaker. I find myself never really choosing anything lower than fine, unless I really have to. I've done it on a few occasions on a few Chinese pens that only came with extra fine, just because I wanted to review the body of the pen. And I've done it recently with my Pennider La Grande Bellezza with a quill nib, extra fine, but that's because it has a quill nib. So that extra fine is not an extra fine. It writes like a medium, if you will. So there you have it. So in terms of pen, an absolute deal breaker would be any pen that has less than fine. I would not go for it. I would not go for it unless I have to. In terms of ink, I don't like those light inks. Anything that's light that I can't see when I write with, a lot of the yellows, the orange colors, pinks, but these light blues, light grays, light black that come on very watery. I have a few of them, and they will never be used. So, for an ink, it's got to give me some oomph to it. Otherwise, I would never really ink a pen with those inks and use them on on any basis. So there you have it for deal breakers for pens and inks. Be right back. Okay, I think this is the bonus question. What is one pen that everyone should have? Okay. Let me go down to, my overhead camera. Well, first of all, I think there's 4 categories that I'd like to distinguish, and that is, if we're looking at an expensive pen that everybody should have, it should be one of these 4 pens. Either the Montblanc 149, the Sailor King of Pen, the Visconti Homo Sapiens, or the Pelikan M1000. Which one of these 4, anyone would do the trick? I would just go with the 149. No, that's the Sailor. Sorry, the 149. Why? Just because this pen never loses value. It writes like a charm. It is a status symbol to a certain extent, but if you're going to, show off with a pen, this is the one you would want to show off with. And the writing experience is just fabulous. So I would choose the 149 in the expensive category. In the medium range, I would choose the Pilot A23. A lot of people have said that this is, it's just a gem of a pen that everybody should own. Writes just beautifully, got choice of nibs. It's a vacuum filler, so lots of ink. It's got everything going for it, and it's elegant. So that would be the A23. And in the budget or, low-priced category, my choice would be this Chinese Wingsung 630 that I've fallen in love with. It has the girth and shape of a 149, writes absolutely beautifully. It is a piston filler. It has a number 8 size nib. And, goes for, $20, $30. So that would be the low priced. In terms of flex nib, I would go with the Mag 600. I think everybody should own one of these, but provided you own something else. It is I think it gives you the flex of a vintage nib with a modern, body and efficient construction, because I find all those vintage flex nibs are all finicky. So everybody should own a Mag 600 in my view. So that's the answer to the bonus question. So there you have it, folks. I hope you enjoyed my answers to those 8 more questions. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know. Maybe you have your own twist. Have I forgotten something? Should I have taken something into account? Let me know. I hope you enjoyed that. Grazie molto. Thank you very much. Please subscribe. Thumbs up, thumbs down. If it's going to be a thumbs down, explain why. And please enjoy your pens. Have enormous fountain pen therapy. It's good for all of us. Take care, folks.